Hi, folks! Sorry I haven't made a video in, forever. Since the first one. Back in August? August. But I decided to end my drought of videos by doing a book review because I finally finished The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, who is actually JK Rowling. So here's the story kind of behind this book. It is written by JK Rowling, but she published it under a pen name because she wanted to try and do a little experiment to see how people thought of her writing when it's not linked to Harry Potter. So she published this book under a fake name. Tons of secrecy around it. No one but her editor and her publishers and that sort of stuff knew. So they sent it out into the world, and it was doing fairly well. It was getting some good reviews. There's some really awesome blurbs on the back of this novel. The Cuckoo's Calling reminds me of why I fell in love with crime fiction in the first place, by Val McDermid, best-selling author of Vanishing Point. Robert Galbraith's debut is a hard-bitten and hard-driving as its battered hero. The Cuckoo's Calling scales the glittering heights of society, even as it plumbs the dark depths of the human heart. A riveting read from an author to watch, by Mike Cooper. Camoran Strike is an amazing creation, and I can't wait for his next outing. Strike is so instantly compelling that it's hard to believe this is a debut novel. I hope there are plenty more Camoran Strike adventures to come. A beautifully written debut, introducing one of the most unique detectives I've come across in years. Well, little does Mark Billingham, author of The Demands, know, but this isn't technically a debut novel. It is a debut crime novel, so that is saying something. But yeah, so it was out in the world for a few months, and it was doing well. It was getting decent numbers in selling. Obviously, detective novels aren't, as high-push selling novels as some other stuff, so it makes sense that it was doing well. And then, one of J.K. Rowling's lawyers went and told his wife that J.K. Rowling wrote this book, and she was like, what? And she couldn't keep a secret, so she told everybody, and everyone found out and flipped the freak out, so many bookstores. Sold out of this. Amazon was out and that. Barnes and Noble was out like that. Chapters was out like that. They had to do a rush second printing just because once it got out that J.K. Rowling wrote this book, it just became bam, instant bestseller because everyone was like, what? We need to read it. So anyways, J.K. Rowling wrote this book under the name of Robert Galbraith, and it was really good. I enjoyed it. I don't typically read detective fiction, so it was definitely kind of interesting. I watch tons of crime dramas, but for some reason I just typically don't pick up crime books, but that might change. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. So I guess we'll do a quick brief plot summary. So Cuckoo's Calling is about a private detective named Camoran Strike. Which is a really interesting name, and it's fun to try and say in your head. Camoran Strike, Camoran Strike, Camoran Strike, Camoran Strike. And so Camoran Strike is an ex-army police officer, used to be a cop in the army who would investigate weird deaths and stuff. And so he was in Afghanistan, and while he was there, he was solving all these murders and stuff. And then he got injured in an IED blast, and he lost the part of one of his legs. So he has a prosthetic leg. So he comes back, and he's dating this woman named Charlotte, who we only see him a little bit of, because right at the beginning of the novel, they break up. And Charlotte, from Camoran's description at least, kind of sounds like a horrible piece of work. She's a very clingy, needy girlfriend who likes to she likes to manipulate people and get back at him, so most of the novel is spent with Camoran being, kind of, scared of what Charlotte is going to do because they've had, a very rocky relationship. They've broken up many times before, but this is the first time that, he instigated it. So that leads to some interesting, him being worried about that. So essentially, the novel starts out with Camoran just having left Charlotte, his ex. And so as he left Charlotte, he had she kind of had everything. So it's he was living there, he was all this stuff, and so he had just left her. So that leaves him essentially homeless because he doesn't have a place other than hers. And his private detective business isn't doing well. So he essentially has one client currently, and it's this wonderful lady. Crap, I can't remember her name. It's this little lady who hired him to see whether her husband was having an affair, and it turns out that he is. So that kind of sucks for her. But anyway, so it's he doesn't really have any clients. And So it starts with him in kind of rough shape when all of a sudden he gets a new temporary secretary. And so his temporary secretary, her name is Robin. She just moved to London with her fiance, Michael. Matthew. Matthew is her fiance's name. So she moves to London with him, and so she's just looking for work. She's just working as a temp until she can get a job. And she has, like, interviews and stuff, but little does Strike know, or even, like, her fiance Matthew, Robin's always, like, wanted to be, like, a gumshoe. We don't get a whole lot of Robin's perspective, but you can tell that she's, like, A, very capable, and B, really, really excited to be working for a detective. But she doesn't really want anyone to know that because she still thinks she's silly. So it's kind of an interesting, like, seeing, like, her and Strike, because Strike doesn't really know what to expect of her. She's just like, well, you're a lot more capable than most of my other temps. And so you can kind of tell, like, and plus Strike is also, I think, just wary of women after his really rough breakup with Charlotte. So there's kind of that, and so it's just sort of balancing out between them and them. So there's lots of interesting character interplay, but the main plot behind the story, which I probably should have gotten to long before now, is that Camoran is hired by this guy named John Bristow. And so John Bristow comes from a rich family, and his adopted sister, Lulu Landry, had 3 months earlier had been reported to commit suicide. So the novel starts out with actually that death, and it's Lulu Landry was this really famous supermodel. She was in all these different ads, and so there's lots of hype. One morning, she falls from the roof of her falls from her balcony to her death. And so there's this huge investigation, everyone's trying to figure out what it is. Some people say, like, there's weird, unreliable witnesses and all this sort of stuff, and the cops determine that it's a suicide. She jumped, whatever. Her brother remains unconvinced, so he hires Strike to investigate the circumstances of her death, because there are some fishy things that happened. And so the novel is about Strike going and investigating Lulu Landry's death. But it also focuses kind of on, like, Strike as a character, because it's a first novel, so you're introduced to the main character, who is Camoran Strike. And so you kind of, like, learn about his, like, detective style and all that sort of stuff. He's a pretty likable character. He's described as this, like, really huge, big guy. Like, he's kind of, like, a bear looking, and he's not very attractive. Like, physically attractive, apparently, but whatever, he's just, I don't know. He seems like a nice guy. Kind of had a rough life. But, no, the novel's really good. It starts off really interesting. Okay.